The controversy between Guyana and Venezuela over the settlement of Guyana's western border has been brought to the attention of the international community. In this week's edition of Guyana 411, we look at the history of the Guyana-Venezuela border controversy, legal and archaeological evidence that prove that Essequibo is part of Guyana, and you will hear from the descendants of the first peoples to ever occupy that region. This is Guyana 411. I'm Azim Khan. Stay tuned. In 1899, the border between what was then British Guyana and Venezuela was determined by way of a tribunal, and it seemed like the issues had been put to rest to the satisfaction of all the parties concerned. However, in February 1949, a memorandum written 5 years before by one of the lawyers for Venezuela attacked the award, but by that time all those who had participated in the case had died.
Essequibo, which was founded in 1596, would have changed hands between the Dutch, French and English due to constant battles amongst themselves. February 1783 saw French occupying the colony after compelling Governor Robert Kingston to surrender. However, the signing of the Peace of Paris later that year restored Essequibo to the hands of the Dutch. On 13th of August 1814, the colony became officially recognized as belonging to the British and was merged with the colony of Demerara. By the 21st of July 1831, Demerara and Essequibo were united with Berbice to create British Guyana, now Guyana. In 1838, Essequibo was made one of the 3 counties of Guyana.
It was agreed that they would have a tribunal. The British didn't do it voluntarily. They did it because they were under political pressure and economic pressure globally. They fought a lot of battles and lost them, exhausted a lot of resources. Well, they lost some of them, but it exhausted them politically, and as a consequence of those losses, which ranged from Gallipoli, Southern Africa, and so forth, they agreed to sit down with the U.S. and speak at a time when the U.S. power was rising, and when logistically the U.S. would find it easier to bring pressure to bear on the United States. In fact, the Secretary of State of the United States threatened to go to war with Britain over the question of the arbitration panel. The arbitration resulted in a treaty in 1897, and in 1897 the Venezuelans agreed, as is normal in an arbitral award, beforehand that they would accept the results. The results were supposed to be accepted as binding, as final, as perfect. That is the language used.
In 1814, after entering into a treaty with the Netherlands, Great Britain controlled the 3 colonies of Berbice, Demerara and Essequibo, which together formed British Guyana. In 1835, Robert Schomburgk was commissioned to define a western boundary which became known as the Schomburgk Line. In 1895, Venezuela pressured the United States to coerce Britain to establish a tribunal to further define the border between Venezuela and British Guyana. That tribunal award clearly delineated the border between Venezuela and British Guyana, giving Venezuela the mouth of the Orinoco, which is one of the largest rivers in South America and a commercially important estuary in the entire South America.
In 1966, Venezuela claimed one piece of Guyana's territory. In 1968, an additional piece, now including the Marines, the territorial sea, was being claimed. By the time you get to 2009 and 2010, Venezuela was claiming the area that constitutes a good part of our exclusive economic zone, although they are not part of the treaty or the convention of the law of the sea. And now we have a claim that takes Venezuela's, the territory Venezuela is claiming, beyond what was claimed in 2010, and including areas that have been arbitrated by the UN. The Convention of the Law of the Sea delimited the maritime space between Suriname and, and Guyana. The so-called southern zone of integral defense of Venezuela takes in that area. So this is the second international treaty on Guyana's boundaries which Venezuela defies. The first one is a treaty signed by Venezuela itself. And let me say that the Venezuelan treaty with Guyana in 1899 was arbitrated by a panel. That treaty has not been or is not being honored by Venezuela, right? Notwithstanding the powers that they had. Today you have a UN treaty governing the sharing of marine resources. And that treaty, almost all the countries with coastal territories, with coasts, are party to that treaty, have agreed on the delineation of those treaties. Venezuela is the only country in the world that redefines the allocation of marine space, the only country in the world.
Since the tribunal award, Venezuela would have accepted it for at least 50 years, after which, in 1966, they would have claimed territory belonging to Guyana once more. By 2015, they would have shown that they would have consistently extended their claim by questioning the rights over Guyana's territorial sea, which constitutes a majority of our country's exclusive economic zone.
In international agreements, there is a principle of estoppel, meaning that if you have agreed to something, it has stood for 10 years, and you have not questioned it in that time, it has to stand forever. That is international law. And that is why we are insisting that the border is as defined in 1899. And I will go further to say to you, since 1899, no international agreement, no new law has addressed the problem of Guyana and Venezuela or Brazil's borders. No law has, and no agreement has said, look, the border shall henceforth be moved from here to there. This territory shall henceforth be called Venezuela, or that piece of territory will henceforth be called Guyana. Nowhere. And the suggestion that the Geneva Agreement of 1966 is an agreement that somehow bestows on Venezuela land or marine resources anywhere is nonsense. The Geneva Agreement nowhere makes reference to the changed names of territories, to transfer of territories between one country and another. Nowhere. In fact, it is very specific by making reference to the status quo. In other words, saying nothing in the agreement itself shall affect the allocation of territory between the parties. Now, the 1966 agreement needs to be understood in that context. It is not an agreement about changing borders.
Guyana's position of not giving in to the assertions of Venezuela is based upon principle, morality, and the respect for law. The principle of estoppel in international law ascribes that if parties to an arbitration agree to the results thereof and allowed it to stand for any length of time, they are estopped, that is, stopped or barred from going to the courts to contest those results.
While Venezuela continues to push its claim for the Essequibo region, there is archaeological evidence that proves otherwise. In 1841, the Venezuelan boundary dispute with British Guyana began when the Venezuelan government protested what it termed British trespassing on Venezuelan territory. In 1814, after entering into a treaty with the Netherlands, Great Britain controlled all three colonies, Berbice, Demerara, and Essequibo, which together formed Guyana. Because the treaty did not define the western boundary, the British Commissioner Robert Schomburgk, a surveyor and naturalist, to delineate that boundary. His 1835 survey resulted in what came to be known as the Schomburgk Line, a boundary that effectively claimed an additional 30,000 square miles for Guyana. However, this is the exact piece of land that the Venezuelan government is once again trying to claim, even though archaeological evidence dating back to the 18th century stands in solid support of Guyana's present position. In 1897, there were doubts as to whom the original builders of Kaikoverall were. As such, samples of the bricks from the ruins and the lowest courses, together with the keystone of the archway over the door, were collected. Archaeologist J.M. Bart, after reviewing the pictures and samples of the bricks, said that the wall depicted on your photo is definitely not Spanish masonry. The Spanish bricks used in the 17th century is flatter. The view of the color of the brick and its measurement as it relates to masonry both depict the Dutch period between 1650 and 1750. Also, the Dutch tombs, which are located at Columbia and Taymouth Manor Essequibo Coast, also show that areas were occupied by the Dutch, who in the colonial time occupied Guyana. Though the manner and the actual age of the tomb is not known, one resident recently claimed it was in existence before the arrival of his great-grandfather from India in 1908. All of these factors prove that the area claimed by Venezuela is ours. It indeed belongs to the Guyanese people. The controversy that exists over the Essequibo region is a topic that has spanned Guyana and Venezuela's history for over 3 centuries. Why has this issue re-emerged? What could be a driving factor?
Dr. Odin Ishmael, in the Trial of Diplomacy, examined Venezuela's motive for claiming the Essequibo region. In the book, he noted that it was a time when Venezuela had started to expand on its exploitation of mineral resources, including petroleum, iron ore, and manganese, in its region immediately to the west of Guyana's border. Much of the expansion works were being carried out by the American companies, and thus a very large amount of American capital was involved. Odin writes that with the discovery of huge deposits of petroleum, iron ore, and manganese in the region, many righteous Venezuelan politicians, hoping to gain cheap popularity, began to use the issue to whip up nationals' favor and anti-Guyanese and anti-British feelings among the Venezuelan people. At the same time, they commenced publicly to call for the reclamation of the Western Essequibo, on the grounds that since, according to them, the 1899 award was invalid, then Venezuela must reclaim all the territory it was claiming before the signing of the Washington Treaty of Arbitration in 1897. Much the same motive may apply today. ExxonMobil's announcement of a significant oil find off Guyana's coast sparked an immediate response from Venezuela, which claimed that the discovery had been made in Venezuelan and not Guyanese water. This was emphatically rebuffed by Guyana's Minister of Foreign Affairs.
On May 26, 2015, the President of Venezuela issued Decree number 1787, declaring an area that Venezuela now regards as its maritime space. The issue of a decree is well within President Maduro's constitutional right. What, Mr. Speaker, is not his right is to utilize the sovereign territory of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana to generate maritime territory to meet Venezuela's illegal ambitions. That is precisely what the decree purports to do in relation to Guyana's Essequibo. In addition, it mandates and authorizes the Venezuelan Navy to secure the area and clearly to prevent any other state from exploiting, without Venezuela's consent, the resources of the area, an area that now includes a significant portion of Guyana's maritime space. This decree, in its baseless and shameless attempt at usurping Guyana's territory, is also intended to deny Guyana her legitimate right to continue the pursuit of existing development initiatives. It is also intended to impact negatively on other pending and future development initiatives in that portion of Guyana's legitimate maritime space that falls within the area circumscribed by the decree. In 2013, a Venezuelan naval vessel seized a seismic vessel conducting surveys in Guyana's maritime space on behalf of Andarco, a company that had been granted exploration rights. The action created a climate of uncertainty amongst potential investors in Guyana's maritime space. ExxonMobil is amongst the companies that continue to work on its concession area in spite of this use of force by Venezuela against the technique perdana. In fact, no reasonable observer could have possibly anticipated that Venezuela could ever regard the position where the Deepwater Champion is located as even remotely falling within areas claimed by Venezuela. Clearly, as was revealed at the end of February, we all underestimated Venezuela's appetite for territory. Decree 1787 has confirmed this appetite.
It must also be remembered that Venezuela had objected to the exploration of hydropower in the Essequibo region.
It is instructive to note the Anadarko incident just referred to occurred just a few months after President Maduro of Venezuela visited Guyana. In a joint declaration with President Ramotar, they expressed their satisfaction with the results of their dialogue and welcomed its promise for the enhancement of relations between the two countries. On that same day, a group of Venezuelans, accompanied by armed military personnel, landed at Etringbang. A few weeks later, there was a similar occurrence by opposition Venezuelan legislators who indicated that their presence was part of an act of sovereignty. Just last year, as part of its development program, and in pursuit of initiatives already agreed to within UNISUR, Guyana and Brazil began a program that involved inter alia examination of hydropower development in parts of the Essequibo region. The government of Venezuela, also a member of UNISUR, formally objected to this development and required both the Brazilian government and the Brazilian firm undertaking the feasibility studies to desist from carrying out any action in what the Venezuelan government described as being unquestionably Venezuelan territory. Unquestionably Venezuelan territory, in quotes, Mr. Speaker. A similar sentiment was communicated to Guyana. Venezuela insisted that its consent was required before any significant action could take place on Guyana's territory. These approaches and that insistence have been wrongly and rightly rejected.
All Guyanese know that Essequibo is our richest region, so it is no wonder why Venezuela would want to claim it for themselves. However, the government has decided to pursue a judicial route to have the matter settled once and for all.
Government plans to take whatever actions it deems appropriate to protect the territorial integrity of Guyana, as Guyanese have said no to the claims by the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela to annex 5/8 of Guyana's territory. Guyana's first people, the Amerindians, have condemned Venezuela's claim to the Essequibo region. The descendants of these first inhabitants of the land, who were there centuries before the European settlers, are giving their support to the government of Guyana as it pursues diplomatic and legal recourse to have the matter settled in a definitive manner.
The people of Guyana and the indigenous people at large, it is our concern because we are a peaceful people, as the songs say, and we are a small country. We cannot fight back with them, but we need to address this issue and deal with it in the international level. As an Amerindian, the land belongs to us. We are the natives, we are the first people of this country, and it is all our concern that the land belongs to us, Essequibo belongs to us. So that is our concern, and that is our final saying, it belongs to us. As you know that the indigenous peoples own over 14% of the land, and when you check it, majority is in the Essequibo. So indigenous people are attached to their land and they will not take it lightly. right? So they are supporting the government on this.
While there are Amerindian communities in Berbice and Demerara, it is in Essequibo that most of their villages can be found, so any claim to the Essequibo region is seen as a claim to Amerindian lands.
Indigenous people, I can tell you, around Guyana, they're feeling very, very patriotic at the moment. Very, very patriotic. It's not that an easy ID card and Venezuela get. No, it's nothing of the sort. And it reminds me of long ago when you had, when Guyana first, when the foreigners first came to Guyana, the Europeans first came to Guyana, when the Caribs were used to patrol the borders of Guyana to defend Guyana. I think right now, Indigenous people are feeling so patriotic that they're prepared to defend Guyana again.
It's a ridiculous claim, that's the first thing I must say. I don't really know where to start because I'm very passionate where the boundaries of Guyana are concerned. And we've been having this problem with Venezuela for a little while. Not a little while, a long time, right? And but I think that we have made progress, particularly now that our president has been to the United Nations and made his case. I feel a little more comfortable, but at the same time, I'm very passionate, as I said. I'm not happy with the position that Venezuela has taken. And I don't buy the story that he's sending rocket launchers to the border to fight narcotics. You know, these are things that I wouldn't buy. And as a former army guy too, you know, these are things that I wouldn't accept from Venezuela. The other thing I want to point out is that the area that Venezuela is claiming has, I think, approximately over 100 villages, indigenous villages, that that would be nixed from Guyana's territory if that should happen. I don't think it would happen, but that is the position that we're in. We speak a lot about having titling lands and and things like that. If that happens, there's no land to be titled. So we have to be very careful, and I think that the indigenous people should be in the forefront of this struggle, because this is a struggle for Guyana, it is a struggle for everybody, and we should be at the forefront there. We are at the border there, and we should be the people that should stand there, so that we can play our full role in what I think we should really rightly deserve.
I believe that Venezuela is trying to rob us of our territory, and it is nonsense. And the government needs to stand for them. Don't let the threat to this rice business. If they got to pull out, let us find market. I think we got brilliant people in there to deal with that. We don't want to implement nothing that will cause problem with us. We are still neighboring people and we are still friends. But if they decide that they want to pull out their stuff from us, we need to stand fast. If Venezuela need to go, then we need to show them that we can stand up, carbon up, and not to blade the grass.
All the time they didn't claim it, the settling within them, they and the PPP. Why now they're fighting back fit? Because of the island.
Yeah, the first thing the president's supposed to do is to deport all the people, all the Venezuelans in this country. Every one of them, deport them, and what belongs to we belongs to we. Okay? They cannot come and trying to claim what belongs to us and deport all them. So who getting the benefit from Guyana? Let them go back home and look for whatever become of them, they become of them home. And the Venezuela are getting a lot of things from this country, a lot of benefits.
I know about Guyana, you know nothing about Venezuela. I know about the Essequibo River, 365 islands in the Essequibo River belongs to Guyana. Me know how these Spanish people come now and say but they own the whole of Essequibo. All of a sudden, so. And I'm 58 years old and I know about Guyana. I don't know nothing about Venezuela. Right? Well, the measures the government's supposed to go and resolve, peaceful talk with them. You know what I mean? That's what the previous government. Why they attack we at a sudden thing like this? And the previous government they never attack. You know what I mean? This thing is about government situation. I think they should sit down on the table and come to a bargain table and let everybody there at a peace.
Venezuela, Guyana is a controversial things happening since in the last century and beyond. And it's a situation that our country finds itself in now. is for peaceful talk. It's not that we must go on a forceful, confront the problem in a forceful manner. We must sit down, get the United Nations, get CARICOM, get UNISAR, get whoever are these organizations, and let me put it on the table and for discussion.
The SQ belongs to us. So if Maduro wants to do what he wants to do, that's about it. I would stand for him with my government too. You understand? I would not allow Venezuela to come and take what belongs to me and my children. I's a Guyanese, 100% Guyanese, and I can die according to Maduro. You see, people can die for their own, well, I can die for my country.
Across the country, there are thousands more Guyanese who fully support the peaceful efforts being made to have the controversial claim by Venezuela definitely settled. Recourse to the international court would provide such a solution. You are watching Guyana 411. It is our hope that this week's edition would have enlightened you on the current controversy between Guyana and Venezuela. Until next week, do remember to keep your head up, be proud Guyanese, and support the restoration of Guyana by keeping your environment clean. Goodbye now.